Hey gang, welcome back to the big board. Thought we'd have a chat today about the early gameplay of Ligny, which is from Hexasim. It's the Battle of Ligny, which is part of the Waterloo Battles series that they're working on. Set in 1815, Prussians versus Napoleon. So an interesting little construct here, fascinating battle. And had some interesting results come out of it. So the battle here, the scenario we played today in part was scenario 4, and for my money, this is a good scenario, but I'm really looking forward to playing the scenario number 5, which is more of the what if stuff, but all of the forces basically start off the map, and all of the forces, nearly everything is hidden when you begin the actual gameplay. So if you understand the hidden movement mechanic, then I don't need to explain it anymore. But I'll come back to some of the mechanics in a little bit, just so you can have a feeling for what's going on. So the first image we're looking at right now is the initial setup, looking from the Prussian side of the field. I was playing the Prussians in this particular battle, and the Prussian First Corps has forces spread out in the center, where that red disc is. The units in a little village just outside of Ligny. And then to the south in Saint Anne, which is a little hard to read, it's upside down, along the river line in the woods there. And then further along to the right-hand side, following the curve of the river, you can see that there are some additional units there. Now, they don't have to set up there. You could, in fact, put all of First Corps in one location if you wish. The forces are set up. There are some other bits and pieces floating around as well that are First Corps units. There are options on the map that allow you to set up within 3 hexes of numerals that are on the setup maps. And with that, you could indeed put an entire corps in Ligny, for instance, or Saint Arne, I think it's called, or one of the other towns whose names I'll pronounce badly. So we'll just kind of say that place by the river. And so you could have done all those things. But what I decided to do was spread the forces out, because I knew that pretty much no matter where the French at the top of the screen there on the right-hand side that are deployed, they have 3 locations they could set up, but all of those were pretty much within 6 hexes of each other. So I knew that somewhere there would be a gathering of French forces, but I wasn't sure how far they'd be able to get in the first turn, and what they could do and what they could achieve. And I didn't want to lose a flag on the very first turn, because that then kicks in Blucher's impetuosity rule, which means every turn you have to attack with Blucher in the stack, or you lose 50 VPs. So it's a pretty hefty penalty. That's the initial setup. So all the units kind of from the middle of the map around to the right-hand side, following the river line. First Corps, there's some First Corps units in the middle, some cavalry. And then further back on the right-hand side of the map, towards the bottom of the screen, is Second Corps forces. I've kind of situated them along the road. And in hindsight, I probably would have pushed them as far forward as possible, perhaps as close to Ligny as I could get. And then perhaps taken the chance that the French would not make it into the outskirts of the village and capture that first central location in the first turn. Maybe have a bit of a race to get there and have a little bit of a battle. Because what ends up happening otherwise is that you're fighting in a piecemeal fashion that we'll see. And on the left-hand side of the screen, you will see there's also Third Corps. And there goes my air conditioner. Trying to warm me up down here. So there's Third Corps there, and the French are all kind of arrayed. There are some unknown formations. There are 2 cav formations on the left-hand side, right near that screen glare. Actually, you won't see the screen glare in your version, but the screen glare, and there's 2 cav formations. The guard is behind that French formation to the left in the center. That's where the Imperial Guard is, and there's another corps back there as well, another cav corps back there. So the first action, the opening moves, were pretty aggressive move by Van Damme, bringing Third Corps in, attacking Saint Arnay, this little village here, this little village area. There's a flag, as you can see, the two red discs denote the flag locations. They're worth 10 VPs per turn per flag. So a total of 70 VPs a turn are accrued by the Prussians. So it's incumbent upon the French to pick up flags pretty quickly. Otherwise, a runaway escalation of VPs occurs. Of course, unless the Prussians bring in a bunch of reinforcements and the French don't. So early attacks go very well for the French, and they put quite a bit of hurt on the Prussians. You can see I made a mistake by situating that cavalry artillery by itself there. Not a good idea. And Arnie goes on top. There's an infantry unit underneath that first artillery formation there. Only 3 factors can fire out of a village. Another rule detail that I overlooked when setting up, but that's okay. We just retreated that initial unit, but we did lose a unit routed out of the hex there. I'm trying to think which one it was. If that was Artie, that probably should have been eliminated, and I think we fixed that later on, hopefully. And then that left me with, actually, let's just see here real quick. Yeah, that's left me with 24th Infantry trying to hold that space by themselves, which was tough. You can see we've got a full corps barreling in on us. The good news is that only 20 combat factors per hex can be attributed to a combat. So at best he can get 60 factors against my 12 there, and then he'll get a huge whack of DRMs to help with that combat, and I will only pick up 2 DRMs, die roll modifiers, and it's painful, as you will see. We fired upon heavily. I pushed in on my second activation. I push in Zethan with the some cavalry, try and slow down the advance there a little bit, and trying to make it at least till the end of the turn before I lose, beginning of the next turn before I lose that hex there. I move the cavalry artillery in, and we try and reinforce that village. Well, we did in fact put a little bit of hurt. You can see a retreating infantry in the background there from the French Third Corps, and then they just come piling in. So a bit of a beatdown on that hex. We took quite a bit of losses from the artillery and weapons fire, musket fire. So at the end of the or middle of the turn, you can see the 4th Corps on the left-hand side of the screen is advancing. I've jiggered around. Actually, I haven't moved. Yeah, that's 1st Corps units there have moved a little. We're still trying to hold on to Saint Arnay. Or I know is it ARN? I can't even read it from here. We'll just keep going. And tough time because you've got orders, right? And the orders that have been given are for the 1st Corps forces to move towards the top of the screen and defend that village area along the river. So I can't move any of the units that are in Forno, just outside of Ligny. We can't move them away. They can only move closer to the enemy. To the objective, I should say. So look at the next screen, and you'll see a little bit more up close detail as I try to race in some of the 2nd Corps forces. I use von Blücher to conduct some independent commands to push more units into the village here in preparation for a big knockdown drag out battle that will be conducted over this area. And with the activations, I also bring the second corps in, which their objective is to move into Ligny. And you can see that some losses have been taken and some retreats have occurred. We've got bounced out of the orchards there pretty easily, and things are looking grim for the Prussians in the early stages of the game, and pretty dire straits. Forces continue to rout away, and the French continue to beat on the Prussians pretty heavily, and I am wondering, what am I doing wrong? After playing so well in the Austerlitz game, I think I came into this a little unprepared. Probably should have reread the rules yet one more time just to be clear and crisp on the various attributes and the way in which things work most effectively for your forces. Didn't do the study, and we're paying the price for it. And it's at this point when I have now brought, let's see, Third Corps online and begin to move them forward. We've spotted their cavalry forces, so they've been exposed onto the map. You can see the Imperial Guard in the top left-hand side there are advancing up the road rather scarily. And when they become exposed, they move at 5 movement points, so even their infantry move faster than the Prussians. So it's a bit of a beatdown, but we have managed to reinforce Ligny in particular, and we're holding on there. And on the top right-hand side, you can see that we're holding on to that village up there as well. So it's all nip and tuck at the. Is this the end? This must be the end of the first turn, because there are no activation markers on the field. So a little bit of combat, and I have not yet. It's mainly been the French attacking and us trying to hold on and reinforcing hexes, putting more men into the meat grinder, versus me actually attacking. And then it's in the second turn that I realized that we need to start doing something of that nature, and off we go. So I start out with some heavy attacks using von Blücher or Blücher, depending on your ability with German, and we get in there and start attacking this the 30th unit there, the line unit, and bringing our heavier infantry in, and we attempt to put the hurt on a couple of different divisions there. Similarly, down in this little valley here, you can see a number of flipped over units in the top of the screen. You can see 1, 2 units that have not only taken step losses but have had to retreat. So they were trying to attack, but then bounced out. Failed their morale rolls and had to retreat out of the offense. So most of those melees were cancelled. Similarly, the Prussians were fired at and imposed upon the French Third Corps a number of step losses. I think, in fact, in that activation, von Zieten put 4 step losses on the Third Corps, and one of them was a particularly large unit, so we're putting some hurt on the French in the Third Corps, and it's softening up their ability to attack us effectively, which is a good thing. Here you can see those melees that we were talking about earlier on. Now let's see what happens with those in the next screenshot. Well, okay, so not a whole lot happened, but we did, if you see here, there were 2 units there. We advanced into that hex and took that hex back, but are now being counter-assaulted, and we've had some forces retreat off in the background there. So we're taking, it's a to and fro battle for this particular area in front of the river. There's a horizontal shot of my horrible idea to advance the cavalry up against the second French cav, and that does not go well. They countercharge, rout some of my units off. I lose steps. We cause very little damage, and von Thielmann needs a smack across the head. Back down in the village, things have started to stabilize now. You can see there's 2 more steps lost by the third corps, and they're almost at the point where they're not combat ineffective, but they have been forced out of the victory location. They got their they will not earn their 10 victory points this turn unless they can muster some sort of counterattack here. But as you can see, they're already on their second activation, so we'll be able to march into that hex. No zones of control in villages, so it's easy for you to maneuver there and try and cause some damage, and we can recapture that hex. So over on the right now, the left Prussian flank, here comes the Imperial Guard. Spotted. Look at those guys, glorious in their capability with guard units with morale ratings of 11 and the younger guard at 10. High speed, high powered units. The second cav have already beaten up on some of my third corps units in the foreground, and it's going to be a bloodbath in the next turn or two. Who knows which way the Imperial Guard will turn, because we don't know what their orders are, but we can assume that it's somewhere headed towards the third corps. Yeah, the cavalry charge the chasseurs and blow away some of the third corps cav. Was pretty horrible. Oh, that's a little bit of a foggy photograph. I'm not sure why that is so bad, but you can see the huge. Now I've got 1 1/3 corps jammed in around there, and then there's too many units. It's too crowded. Really should have just had 1 corps positioned in there somehow, and either all of 1 corps or all of 2nd corps in that village. Now we've got a bit of a fur ball there as we try and activate units, move units in, not overstack, not have too many deadweight units, because you can only attack with 20 strength points in anything but non-clear terrain. So in anything but clear terrain, I should say. So clear terrain, you can use more than 20 strength points, and anything else can have a maximum of 20 strength points per hex attacking in. So nevertheless, similar to the sort of northern end of the map, the top right hand side, here we're starting to chip away at the power of the 4th corps there, and hopefully trying to weaken them down enough so that we can perhaps bring 2 corps together to stay the hand of the Imperial Guard as it advances up. I just took a shot of my orders here because we want to continue this game and perhaps play on, and if not, what we'll do is run the 5th scenario, and Pete will probably just play this out solo and see what happens, and we'll kind of go from there. So enjoyed it immensely. I thought I'd share some of this with you so you can have a look at it, and we will touch base soon, and we'll talk more about, in fact, since this is 18 minutes long, we'll talk more about the game, how the game works, the rules and whatnot in another video, if there's some interest in having a conversation about the actual game mechanics and why I think it's a good game versus others. So all the best. We'll talk to you soon.